Another episode of Fun Friday with a repeat guest, a friend, a Renaissance man, a world traveler, a very, very interesting guy who's even getting more interesting, which is why I wanted to bring him back to the show. If you remember him, he and his lovely wife were going to embark on a very special journey, which they're in the way through, and I'm enjoying the YouTube videos that they're producing right now. But welcome none other than Derek Peterson with Adapt Media Agency. How are you?
I'm great, Craig. Thanks for having me back, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a bummer that I don't get to see you as much for the next couple of years, I would imagine, because everything you're doing right now. But before we get into what you're actually doing right now, just a quick recap of all the things that you do, the businesses that you're in, and things of that nature.
Yeah. So I've got a few businesses from that perspective. Probably the main thing that most people know me for is the marketing firm. So I've got a marketing firm. It's called Adapt Media Agency. We've got about 20 employees, grown it over the last half decade plus, and we're an agency that's focused on building brands in the real estate, capital raising, and syndication space. So in the wealth sector, we also do fund managers, things like that. And then we also build brands in the health arena and also personal brands. So we always kind of say we were on health, wealth, and self, or sort of the branding things that we focus on. Just also have to be three passions of mine. So there's good alignment there. My wife and I own a travel agency called Amy and Derek Travel. Not a very original name. Obviously, you know what my wife's name is now, and something we started a few years ago. Because as you see, as we dive into this podcast, definitely have an affinity and a passion for travel. We share that, so you and I compare notes quite often on that. That and good cigars, right?
Yes.
So, real estate. I am a equity shareholder, part owner, co-founder of not one but now two real estate companies, and which I'm very excited to be a part of. I've raised close to $80 million for those two entities over the course of the last half decade or so. So it's definitely something that's a big passion of mine. Another thing that we share in common is a passion for real estate. I have a supplement company. That's another side hustle, and I do some personal and professional coaching on the side, which is somewhat of a new thing that it just sort of come to me, that we're rolling out a brand on that's pretty soon. So those are
Cool.
kind of the main flags in the sand as far as what keeps me busy when I'm
Yeah,
not traveling.
well, yeah, let's start with the capital raising thing. I have notes here. I want to unpack all of them. So, from a capital raising perspective, raising $80 million is not easy to do. That's a substantial amount of equity here. And you said there are two ventures you're working on right now. So, I believe one of them, would that technically be 10Y? And then is
Correct.
the other one, I heard from the grapevine, perhaps medical device buildings and things of that nature. I don't
Yes.
know if that's exactly right, but
You're
would love for
close.
you to, yeah, I would love for you to go through both of them. Maybe start
Sure.
with everyone you would like to do. Maybe start with the new one, and then we'll go to the 10Y.
Sure. Yeah. So I have got a company that's called Health Wealth Capital, and the asset class that we focus on is triple net leases in the medical healthcare space. So that's what we focus on. So we buy medical office buildings. We buy those practices, and then we take a look at the tenant. My partner AJ has a unique skill set in evaluating the financial efficacy of those tenants because he's been part of a building $100 million DSO, dental service organization, over the better part of the last decade and a half. So he's done hundreds of these leases, looked at the financials. He's a Carnegie Mellon guy, really, really sharp guy, and so has built this relationship and understanding leases. Has tons of relationships with brokers, has done these transactions over and over. So it kind of became a bit of a side hustle for him. And now it's turned into a full bona fide business, where he's able to go in, we're able to locate the properties, make sure the leases make sense, buy them, and then make sure that the tenant in there makes sense. It's great. It's a cash flow play all day long. Cash flow is day one, right? And what's nice about, not to dive too deep into it, but what's nice about that asset class, what I liked about it in particular, why I decided to partner up with them, is the recession resistance of the healthcare space. Having some familiarity with the healthcare space, it was something that I thought was really nice, and it complemented and contrasted completely what the other business did. So it made sense for me, to be part of that.
Yeah, and do you guys, if I'm not mistaken, do a roll-up strategy where if you get a certain amount of them together, you sell them in chunks? Like, what's the strategy? How's the value creation done? Can you maybe unpack that? Because Gib was talking about it, who of course is I think raising with you guys.
He is.
But just to kind of give people the option and the education of just different ways to invest. It's always so interesting, whether it be oil, gas, multifamily, short-term rentals, all that stuff is fascinating, right? So let's talk about how the value creation is done, maybe, and kind of the nuts and bolts, the locations, the type of offices and practices, so people can get acquainted with it.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole podcast on just this, but just to give the high level, and we could certainly maybe even consider having AJ on to talk more in depth about it. But essentially, you're right. We buy the buildings in sort of clumps, blocks, and the goal is get the NOI to a certain point, and then sell it in an UPREIT strategy, right? So selling it off to a REIT, which REITs are very attracted to this, so that they can take the IRR from the base case IRR, which is solid, up to something that's very, very attractive. It's pretty simple. Triple net leases are pretty basic, right? When you take the building, you put the tenant inside of it, they're responsible for pretty much everything, which contrasts a little bit against what we see sometimes in multifamily. Now, multifamily has all of its amazing opportunities, but it's something that's slightly different. It's a nice product to consider in your real estate portfolio, just because of, I think, the recession resistance, the stability of it, the longevity of it, and just having some things that are somewhat non-correlated, right? A lot of people out there invest in real estate. I invest a ton in real estate. I'm involved in real estate. But I do like this product just because of the medical side of it. I came from a medical background, and the recession resistance that healthcare has when it comes to triple net leases, it's not something that's going to ever go away. People are always
Yeah.
going to need that, and it's always going to be a thing. So it's not something that can be replaced by Amazon or AI or anything like that in the near future. So it has nice legs to it.
What's super interesting is one of my very close friends here in Phoenix, Arizona. He works for Stryker. He does orthopedics, hips and shoulders and things of that nature, right? Hips, shoulders, knees, I think. And what's fascinating is, hey, it doesn't matter if the market is left, right, up, down. If you're someone who's in their 60s or 70s and you need to get a knee replacement, you're getting your knee replacement done. So it's relatively inelastic in many respects. Also, a lot of times insurance helps you cover it too. So being in the healthcare space is quite recession resistant. We obviously have a health crisis in this country, although RFK might have something to say about that now. He's making America healthy again, of course. At least that's his mantra. But with that said, these things don't move overnight, and there's a lot of important needs to that. So I could totally see that being complementary. Is it more cash flow yielding than appreciation yielding? Where is the value being done there?
Yeah, it's definitely it's both, right? So it's definitely it's both, but it's definitely more of a cash flow play,
Right.
For sure. So you're looking in the mid to upper teens on the IRR side, and the cash flow you're looking at a solid 8 to 10% cash
Right.
on cash, right?
Right.
And nice depreciation from it as well, obviously.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a nice product. The goal for us is to go hot and heavy, and looking to acquire about 20 plus buildings a year over the next 36 months, then have a solid NOI on that, and then sell that off.
So when you're raising capital for these, are you raising it in a fund structure, like a blind pool, where you're basically, hey, if I invest, let's say $200,000, right, into these deals, are you going as a one-off, or are you basically buying into the pooling of the group that would be sold off to the eventual REIT?
So good question. So the like Fund One right now has 4 properties in it. There are a variety of different states, and those 4 properties represent the total capital raise for Fund One, and those are going to be closing mid-January, right? So when those close mid-January, that's the first. We put an endpoint on it in terms of raising capital, right? So, but if people don't make it into this round, there's another 4 buildings right behind it that the closing will be pushed out about a quarter. Same projected IRR, same cash on cash returns, same return metrics, but we're doing them in chunks. But they all roll up to the big pot in terms of what we'd be looking to sell off to the REIT.
Very cool. And then let's talk about 10Y, which is the one before this. Just briefly touch on it because I think those are very familiar, but just as a little extra reminder for those who might be looking to invest in, BTR setup.
Yeah, so BTR, Bala, met him many years ago. Love at first sight type of bromance, much like us, Craig. Just a budding bromance. And Tenwai is a unique investment methodology, which is a little bit different than that of the traditional like our Burr methodology, which are all great methodologies. But Bala's thesis in setting up the methodology was when in those first couple of years of ground up development and value add is where the greatest value is created, right? You get your CapEx going, you're building the building, the greatest value is created. And at the end of the couple of years, if you look at the life cycle of a property, then you kind of have that hold period where we're holding for cash flow. For some people, cash flow makes a lot of sense, right? I love cash flow, right? I try to live this nomadic lifestyle and as much cash flow
Yeah,
as
you just need that
possible.
supplemental income. Yeah.
Sweat that mailbox money, right? But for some people, whether it's all of their portfolio or some of their portfolio, they're at a point where they really want to kind of grow their nest egg, right, before they start sacrificing it for cash flow, right? So with this methodology, the idea is that those first couple of years that the build to rent construction is happening, your value is being created, and at that 2 year mark, once it's stabilized and it's ready to go, roughly 2 to 3 year mark, we sell the property, and then it's a 2x equity multiple. We don't look at anything that doesn't have a 2x equity multiple to the project, to the LP side, and then that capital rolls over into the fund into the next property. So it's almost you've got you put your chip on the roulette table at black, your money doubled. Now you're putting it down on the next property. So the idea is to double your money through building and exiting, not holding 5 times over the course of roughly the next 10 to 12 years. Real estate's an unpredictable game. The goal is every 2 years. Some may be shorter, some may be a little bit longer. And we have a lot of levers and a lot of things we're doing to be able to control those dials of how we build and how we actually sell. But that execution, if you double your money 5 times over the course of 10 years, that money exponentially grows. So it's an exponential growth model. Right now, we have 5 properties under development in the Phoenix MSA, and a couple of which are in the EB5 space. It's a whole nother conversation, but that's also something that's very attractive to us, is doing some EB5 deals. So so we're almost done closing out that fund, Craig. So we've got just a little bit of room, maybe like 4 or 5 million left before that fund's going to close. And it's closed forever because, again, the people who invest, the money just continues to roll for the next 10 years. We do give the option to get their capital back at cycle 2, so they can just kind of let the house money roll thereafter. But it's a very unique concept, and something that Bal has executed himself, and now we're bringing it to the market. So very excited about it.
What I love about that strategy is how hands off it is from an investor perspective, where you don't really have to worry about the monthly distributions. Yeah, you maybe read the development update, but it's
Mm-hmm.
nice to not be kind of panicking or thinking about, oh, well, this development's here. We got to make sure we launch it in the right market. Hey, you guys are looking around like we will do well. Some of these will do exponentially well. Some of them might be a little bit softer than others, but if you catch it over the 10-year hold period, you will do well. That money will compound, which is such a fun, unique kind of structure. Also, it's all equity lift. It's all
All equity lift.
equity multiple. It's not cash flow, which for some people cash flow only. But I'm looking like this. It's like, okay, well, if you wanted to be a mercenary here with your dollars, you could go hard money, debt interest, on some of your dollars, and then these dollars here for the equity growth. So you kind of blend your return together. So that's probably a strategy a lot of people employ, I imagine.
100%. And it is definitely a long play, and that's probably the one of the biggest challenges with people that came in with a cash flow mindset, to get them to understand how we're different. If it makes sense for you, right? For somebody who's 67 years old, to wait 10 years for that to mature, unless this is going to their family, maybe it doesn't make sense. But if you're in your late 30s, early 40s, and you're looking to take something, grow it substantially, and like you said, kind of set it and forget it, our whole thesis, what makes and will make us successful over the course of the next decade is the assembly line of project and dirt that we're entitling to receive that incoming capital. So that's the biggest part about what we do. The raising the capital was one thing, but is finding that pipeline of projects to receive the capital. It's a never ending process. I don't do it. We have somebody on our team. Actually, the construction update that you just talked about, that's the next call after that, is I have the construction update meeting, and then the email goes out to all the investors next week. So it is definitely you're in construction, a perpetual stage of construction for a decade.
Yeah, well, and you get really good at that too, right?
We
Like maybe
do,
there's a kink or
yes.
two that you work out, but the
There will
beautiful
be
thing
kinks.
is that you are going to get really good really quickly through this process, which is invaluable. Where, if you're an investor here, it's like, hey, first off, Ball has had his experience before. He's done this. This is kind of a copy paste strategy, but this is not some first time individual who's never exited a deal, that's never kind of executed, and even in a
Exactly.
specific market. Ball lives in the Paradise Valley area, if I'm not mistaken.
He
He's
does.
boots on the ground there, so it should make everyone feel very comfortable with the strategy. And I think what I love there is not how super hyperbolic you need to be in this. I love that. Well, it just depends. Everyone has different needs, but that's exactly how we sell here at Lone Star Capital. Is I want to make sure you love the deal and it's good for your needs, and ask you good questions, not just putting a square peg in a round hole for your strategy. And then also, what really comes to mind here, just philosophically speaking, is the set it and forget it mindset. Right. I love that. So all the dollars I can spend, excluding homes, which is so counterintuitive to how I used to think I wanted to invest, but all the multifamily stuff I do, my bonuses I get with Lone Star, my contributions to the stock market, that to me is all set it and forget. I will just make my annual contributions and never cash out and start spending that money. I'll spend the
Mhm.
dividends, but not, the principal there, right? So that's how I want to get and build my life. But then homes, I want to kind of flip, not set it, not forget it, but kind of extract all the value possible and trade up until I'm in my forever home, if you will, right? So that's my thought. But that dives perfectly into a transition, which is homes, possessions, things of that nature. So the real crux and the real reason why I want you on this podcast is to talk about options and setting up your life and being intentional by, living by design, doing what is purposeful and meaningful. So for those who don't know, Derek is a world traveler. He and his wife, Amy, as you mentioned, so I can say the name now, are on a world tour, and that is not an exaggeration. They're truly on a world tour, although I was hoping you'd be somewhere in like Pakistan or Dubai. Where you are is a little less exciting than I anticipated, but maybe that's why you have such good connection. This is perfect timing. But with that said, you guys have a travel agency company and you've been world traveling. So just for those who maybe didn't listen to the first episode, let's talk nuts and bolts on, why you're doing this, what the purpose was it for, and kind of the whole, reason behind, this total change of things, if you will.
Yeah. So first, I guess I'll tell everybody what we did, and then I can maybe get into why we did it. So back in August of this year, my wife and I left the U.S. Officially as full-time nomads, and what we like to joke about and say we're homeless, because we are. We sold our house. We had a large house in Waxhaw, North Carolina, which is out in the
Beautiful
suburbs of.
home. I saw the YouTubes.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
So we had a big house. A lot of people would never sell a house like that. It's like their dream house. We had a wine cellar and a gym and a sauna and like all the things, screen and porch, fireplace. It was just 6,000 square feet of just pure beauty. And we came to this realization that like we feel most alive, Craig, when we're traveling, like when we're exploring and living out of a suitcase than sitting at home in this, big house, watching Netflix and going through the traditional American grind. And I started to take a look at, well, how would this look if we just said, screw it, let's just sell our house, let's get rid of it, right? Because we traveled a lot. We would travel 120 days out of the year. So a third a year we'd be on the road traveling, and that's what we loved the most. But there was always this like stress of like, who's gonna be doing the landscaping? Like, we got who's taking out the trash, the mail, and all these things. And as the kids aged up and aged out of the house, I was like, why do we have such a big house? Like we live in like 1/4 of it. We literally lived in 1/4 of the house and we didn't go anywhere else. And it just didn't make any sense, right? So I was like, what if we sold everything, went from somebody who had a lot of assets and a lot of things to experience true minimalism? So we started to look at it, and I read something that sort of resonated with me, which was like, everything you own, your car, your house, your nice watch, they all take a little bit out of time and like energy from you. Like
Mental headspace.
mental headspace, right? And some of it's financial headspace, but something as simple. Let's talk about the watch, right? If I wear the nice watch, I have to think like, okay, which watch do I put on? Like, what if like I got to be careful I don't scuff it? You know what I mean? I have to, and it's small, albeit, but it's taking energy and time away from me. It's creating this point of, I wouldn't call it stress, but they're little stressors. Now you take that times your house, your car, and all your things, they stack, and you don't realize it because it's just the American dream. It's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have a big house, supposed to have two cars, supposed to have all the things. And I had all the things. I fell into the trap, right? And I liked it, but then I was like, this does nothing for me. I'd rather be living out of a suitcase in Dubai, roaming the streets and having experiences than this. I think. So I say that because we're like, this is what we think, right? We don't know until we sell all our stuff. So we put together this year-long plan of how we're going to sell our house and all our things. Just selling
And
all your
when did that start? Was that in August of this year, or was that dating back? Because I know that's when the kind of the decoupling process of selling everything is. But you don't just think that conceptually day one, and also getting rid of stuff, getting true value. Oh my gosh, navigating OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace,
Oh
eBay.
God. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine the logistical hassle that may or may not have been.
Bro, it was such a nightmare, right? So yes, the decoupling or the exit of, the plan was executed. We were done. We left was August 4th this year, 2024. We started a year before, right? It was actually more in like September. So, right, like 10, 11 months.
September of 23, roughly.
23. That's when we made the decision. And we made the decision shortly after we decided to finish our basement. We already put a non-refundable deposit into that. So we're like,
Classic.
yeah, figures, right? So I was like, you know what? Let's just finish the basement, right? Because I'll have, a cost per square foot, and we go to sell it in this marketplace. We know we're going to receive the value, which we did. We doubled our money, so that was a good investment. Yes,
Congratulations.
and we enjoyed it a little bit.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, the process to deconstruct what you want your life to look like and where it is today, it's just this whole reverse engineering process. So we bought something. We bought this big ass calendar, right? Jesse Itzler has this thing. It's called the big ass calendar. Well, you got to buy like $2,000 to get his program, but I just bought a big ass calendar at Staples or something for like $4, right? So I put it on the wall, and we made all these post-it notes, and we put these post-it notes on the calendar to say, here are all the things we have to get done by this date. This is when we have to. I sold my own house. Sorry, I know you're a realtor.
No, it's all good. It's all good. We can be overpaid sometimes. I understand. Also, if you have the listing, it's different.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where I'm a marketing guy on a marketing firm. It's hard to have someone else sell your thing.
Derek,
So
you're a smart person and you're in the real estate business. You're not the typical consumer.
true, fair. I just wanted it. I felt I didn't want to.
I really appreciate you putting the respect on my past career and my name. So thank you.
Namaste.
I sold my own house too for what it's worth.
Okay, see, there you go. So and then deciding like, okay, how are we going to inventory everything in our home onto a spreadsheet, take pictures of it, and put it on the marketplace, and then sell that, and then have these trolls basically show up to your house at all hours of the night, showing up with a truck, and then you put the couch in the truck, and the couch was $500, and they're like, oh, bro, I only have 4. I'm like, take the couch out, right? And you had to do that at scale. Was a challenge, right? And that was one of the challenges, selling all your stuff in the house. The bigger challenge, Craig, was I was very hands-on with my businesses, especially my marketing firm. And I said, if I'm going to go be world traveler guy, I said, I need to work on my business, not in my business. So I needed to completely shift my mindset and get monomaniacally focused on systems operations. So I hired an operations manager like back over a year ago when we made that decision. I said, fire me from every role in the job that I'm doing. And I said, completely reshape the way this marketing firm runs. In order to do that, you have to go in to get out, right? And it was such a rapid fire lesson in operations, systems, and processes that I needed to have, that I then extrapolated across all my businesses to just be able to get to a point. The goal was I wanted to work 3 days a week, 4 hours a day. That was it. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 4 hours a day. And then the rest of the time, I want to enjoy the places we were in, shoot the YouTube videos, do those things, create content. And when I say I worked to a level of exhaustion that I didn't think was even possible, like I can't even put it into words. Like I overused caffeine. I probably drank way too much caffeine, during that time period. I grinded. I was up at 4. I was done at 10, and I'm not
And this
exaggerating.
was leading up to
Leading up
the
to it.
exit. This is leading up to traveling. Is it selling all your items? Or is it basically selling the items and getting out of the business and kind of
All of
hiring
it.
yourself? So all the above, basically this whole process to lead you to the point where you could travel and be doing 12 hours a week of work roughly for the output essentially.
Yeah, and that was the dream, right? That was the end goal that we reverse engineered on that big ass calendar, and it was one of these things, man, where I had such a desire to do it that and I kind of, I come from an Ironman triathlon background where I'm used to being tired and fatigued. I'm like used to working that mode, knowing that it's not healthy, but I don't care. I just kind of, I'm like walking around in a daze, just continuing to grind. And I don't advocate for it, because what I wanted to do is flick the switch to a more balanced lifestyle, and a lifestyle that made sense as somebody that's going to the stage of their life where, I can enjoy the fruits of my labor and get out of that American kind of hustle grind mindset that you got to work 18 hours a day. I did it. It sucks. And everyone's rah, rah. Yeah. Sleeping, you're dead. No, if you don't sleep, you will die. So I started to realize I needed to change my lifestyle. And man, I worked my tail off leading up to doing all those things, the personal stuff and the professional stuff, up to that August 4th date. And then we got on the plane. And then we landed in the Azores. You've probably seen the video. It's on YouTube. And at that
Can you
point,
plug
it
your
was,
YouTube channel name real quick? Sorry to cut you off.
for sure, it's called Rich and Homeless, which I
And
can.
we will be putting that in the notes, so don't
Awesome.
worry. But just want to make sure that we get the plugs out there.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. So, and then we left for the Azores, and I just stepped back and let the plan see if it worked, and it did. Right, but it was kind of one of those things I don't know. It was like building a ship and push it into the water and let's see if it's going to float. And what happened was all the effort that went into the systems, the processes, the personnel, the talent, all the books that were read, all the YouTube videos that were watched, all the mistakes and the long hours were put to the test, man. And the business actually grew quite a bit when I stepped away from it. So I got out of the way, and it was just incredible to watch and to see. And it was a really cool moment to be, sitting at a cafe in Portugal, just working a few hours a day and just seeing the team just kill it, and to know what to do, and to know that I should have done that years ago, but it was this stepping into lifestyle vision that was the impetus behind making it happen. So just funny how things kind of roll up, but that's kind of what the experience was like getting ready to leave.
So two themes that come to mind here. So number one, going back to the possessions, what owns takes mind share. If anyone's ever seen the movie Fight Club, the famous line, whatever you own owns you.
Yeah.
So for those who believe in minimalism, probably that's like your North Star gospel line that, hey, actually less is a lot more because you get more time and other things of that nature. You don't have to account for things. That's number one. And then secondly, the kind of so-called balance stuff, right? So I'm someone who's a large believer and have seen the fruits of this labor on a time scheduling perspective, on a budgeting perspective, if you will, on time, where there will be periods of time, even decades. For me, I can say basically a decade that I'm in on this, from basically being a working professional, that you're going to work disproportionately hard to have way more time in the back end. Greg Haig, who's a very famous person in the Phoenix area, 72 sold person for those who are in Phoenix, the brokerage I used to work with, basically still affiliated with the teams and such there. Love you people. Hello, if you're listening. Just basically said, if you work disproportionately hard for, X period of time in your life, you will get way more in return and you'll live a way better life. So much of that, of what you're saying resonates with me, where it's like, hey, if you want to live a great life, you got to do extraordinary things, and you got to get probably very uncomfortable for a period of time and get used to just the grind. But then you can enjoy the fruits of your labor, right? That's kind of what I'm hearing when you're saying what you're saying.
You're 100% right. Just to unbox that and unpack it a minute, from the minimalism perspective, now being on the other side of it, and watching stuff exit my house. like being on Zoom calls, running and grinding through the business to exit it, and seeing my wife just sell things and watching it go out the front door. I remember the day I was on a Zoom call with somebody, I saw the television that we watch go out the front door. And I was like, I didn't know she sold it. I'm like, oh, I guess we don't have television anymore. I'm like, and I stopped for a minute. I was like, don't care. You don't know how you're going to feel until it leaves. Right. So there was no
One less
attachment
thing, one
to
less
things.
bill.
One less thing, one less bill. And it was such a freeing feeling. It was odd to get rid of everything. We were so excited when we sold our house and our cars. I was like, oh my God, I just want to be free of this stuff. And now living on the other side of it, not having all those things that own you, like you said, I can tell you the grass is greener on the side of minimalism than the side of clutter, whatever you call that other side. It's just not, it's just better. It's better for all the reasons that people tell you. It's true. It works. And the hard work piece to unbox that, yeah, that was the mindset. I think a lot of people, we see this in investing, right? The whole concept of delayed gratification. Knowing you got to put in a lot of work today, not knowing what the outcome's going to be. You see that with your fitness, you see that with discipline in your lifestyle and your health and nutrition and all these things. Just you don't see this immediate gratification, yet we live in the society of immediacy with Amazon Now and Netflix and just everything's, pills to solve problems and needles to lose weight, like all these things. Like, you know, those who can grasp onto that concept and see a vision and just put their head down, not knowing whether or not it's going to work. Because I didn't, I didn't, but I had confidence, I had faith, and you're right. A disproportionate amount of work went in, and it has paid the dividends. Now there'll
So
always be those tweaks you got to make along the way. It's not butterflies and rainbows the entire time, but it's pretty damn close.
So I mean, it's the yin and yang, right? It's the dark with the light. So you just got to think
Totally.
about that concept and these, fables, these kind of long, term. I don't know how you could phrase it, but these, concepts and ideas of the yin and the yang. These, long term, thousands-year old things are, so a whole lot of weight, right? So that's kind of one of those things that I think about. But let's talk about the day to day now. So you started traveling. How do you manage businesses and things of that nature, still make money? Obviously, you've got a ton of money, obviously, passively invest in your projects, in third party, things of that nature. What is the day to day like now?
So that was something that I spent a lot of time on, wanting to architect a perfect day. So some of the coaching that I do, I have conversations with people, and sometimes we're really good at giving advice to people, but not listening to it, right?
Right.
Or giving guidance. So one of the things that we look at is like, what does a perfect day look like for you, right? So to me, it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, half days, and I split my days into what I call maker and manager time. It's a concept that I did not make up, but it's basically having space on your calendar that's completely blank, right? There's nothing on there. And some people look at that and they see stress. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't have nothing going on. But that's the time you do the deep work. That's the time you also go enjoy yourself, right? Depends on what you have scheduled for that day. Then your manager time is where you're in that mode, in that mindset where you're just banging out calls. And that can be exhausting, right? That can be tiring when you're call after call after call. But if you have a day where you're trying to stuff in creative, deep work, shooting content or going and seeing things, and you're sliding in a call here and there, it just didn't work. So I saw this concept of maker and manager where you have these blocks on your calendar and you build around them. And there's a whole thesis behind it. But so deploying that, teaching my team that to create that space in their life has just created so much productivity within the organization. And for me, where I know on certain times and certain blocks that I'm going to take calls at this time. So because we live in different time zones, I have to sometimes shift those blocks, but allows me to know, hey, I got to be in front of a computer at this time. Because when you live this mobile lifestyle, I don't have an office. I don't have, like, I'm sitting in a guest room at my mom's house in Stevens Grove, Pennsylvania right now. We've talked before. I've been in Dubai or Pakistan or, Portugal, and you still have this logistics issue. Does your internet work? All these things that you have to factor into consideration. But what I did is I scheduled my life to be present with the other side of the world on specific time blocks. Then the rest of the time I can choose to work on my business, be creative, or jump out of a perfectly good airplane over the Palm in Dubai. Whatever floats your boat that day. But to create more space and balance. And for
Right.
a guy that's kind of a grinder, that was a hard switch to flick. You know what I mean? Because you feel like,
Well, you have the production side of your brain, right? And also, you
yeah,
clearly like to torture yourself. No one in their right mind does Iron Man's, right? Like you're
yeah,
torturing yourself. You're not doing it for money. You're just doing it to see if you can do it, just to see what your body's capable of. There's no, you're doing that truly, as they say, for the love of the game, because you're a little bit sick, which is great, because I am too, in my own
yeah.
respect, right?
I love it. I love sick
Yeah.
minds
Yeah.
alike. Yeah, yeah. No,
Yes.
it's
Yes. For many reasons with our conversations, but
yes.
we won't go there today.
Not today.
Yeah. Yeah. So you designed the life for that. What were some of the best things about this lifestyle change, and what have been the hardest things to adjust to? Would you say?
Mm. So
Because there's no just pro and con. And by the way, I'm gonna run just to get my charger for a second. So let's actually hold that question. I have to
okay,
edit this. Yeah.
you got it.
Sorry about that. My little thing usually charges, but some reason sometimes it doesn't. So I don't want the computer to die on us.
All good. All good.
Hi, Kurt. I hope you're doing great. Kurt's our editor, Derek. Kurt, we're going to just rephrase and just obviously edit this out. I'm going to re ask the question. Okay.
So,
So, what has been the easiest and what has been the hardest transition for you to kind of get into this world and to be traveling on the road, figuring out places, logistically speaking? What's been easy? What's been hard?
so the things that's been the easiest have probably been. Actually, let me start with the hardest. The things that have been the hardest for me is the adjustment to the time zone was a little bit difficult with creating that where you would be depending on the time zone would be when you were taking those calls, right? So I talked earlier about those calls. That was a little bit of a challenge because because of time zones, it's a plus and a minus. Like in Europe, for example, in a European time zone, I know you've worked in a European time zone. You kind of have the first 6-7 hours of the day to yourself, right? So then you go out and you do something fun. Then you kind of arrive and you start your calls from maybe like 2 or 3 till about 6, 7, or 8, right? And then you go out for dinner. Well, you might be a little tired after going out and raging, for getting up early, enjoying something. Then you got to get into work mode. Now you're exhausted a little bit more. Now you're going out to dinner, right? Your significant other, and your phone maybe still be blowing up. So it was making those adjustments and tweaks in the business to be able to navigate that a little bit in the European time zone. When we went to the time zones of Dubai and Pakistan, those were a lot more challenging. That was probably the one of the harder things to learn was that pacing was difficult. I'd say we moved too many times into too many places in our first sort of 3 months of travel.
So, too much pick up, go, as opposed to kind of making a station there.
Agreed. Yeah. We went to the Azores for 5 days, Madeira for 12, Porto for 14, Nazaré for a week, Lisbon for 2 weeks. While it was all within Portugal, it required, planes a couple of times, buses, packing, unpacking. And we probably could have slowed down because we're in no rush, but we just were kind of like, oh, I want to see everything. And so like sort of disconnecting from the traditional, like I'm on vacation mindset.
Well, also
And
the American vacation mindset, which is 10 days go, as opposed to you get Australians or Europeans or people from different parts of the world. No. They do holiday or they do gap year. They travel for an entire year. Obviously, totally different way of life. No right, no wrong. But
yep.
we're used to pick up, go, pick up, go, pick up, go. And I've done that before where even traveling recently, like all my trips, I'm like, it would be nice to just go to Hawaii or something or Mexico where I'm actually just not doing anything for 7 days other than
Mm-hmm.
staying at a resort and,
Yeah.
doing nothing other than maybe overeating and playing golf. But you go on these trips and it's just like, dude, this is so go, go, go. It's tough to really be comfortable.
It is, so it's sort of divorcing from that mindset of like 10-day vacation mode because we're so used to that, right? To like, hey, like Lisbon, I'm not here to see it. This is where I'm living for 2 weeks, right? When I go to the Algarve, this is where we're living for a month. And just get into the traditional routines without feeling this necessity to see everything and do everything and suck the life out of a location like you do when you're on vacation. So that was an adjustment, which fatigued us a little bit. And we learn from that. So we're going to go slower as we go into the next year. And the last challenging thing I'd say is planning. So when you have 10 days, when you have 2 weeks or a week of vacation a couple times a year, it's like, okay, cool. I have this fixed amount of time, and I have this sort of fixed budget because I have all these other responsibilities, right? A house, mortgage, car payments, whatever that is. So it's very easy to kind of pick your spot. Now, when you're planning your life for an entire year, which is what we are faced with right now, where are we going to go for the next year? What are we going to do? Where are we going to stay? How long are we going to stay? To have unlimited choices, it's a blessing, but it's also, we found it was a little bit of a curse because we're like, oh my God, it was overwhelming. So me being an AI ninja, I created this AI bot to kind of learn and understand all our nuances and things we liked and didn't like, to be able to just give it input and have it spit out options so that we create an SOP. Believe it or not, we're now so focused into processes and systems. We have an SOP for picking and planning our year. So I'd say we have 2025 completely planned out, and it is epic. But the effort to get to that point, I mean, it took us probably 100 hours. So
Well,
you're
it's trial and
constantly
error
searching.
too, figuring out
It
what
is.
you want to do and what you don't want to do, eliminating places, figuring out where you want to go. And then also kind of what I have in mind is the highlight reel, right? When you go places, well, you got to hit the highlight reels, but sometimes those things can be disappointing. Maybe they're not worth the effort to get there, or maybe, oh yeah, everyone wants to go to the Louvre until you got to wait in a 2 hour long line, right?
Yeah.
So there's things of that nature that aren't as maybe as easy as you think they would be.
You're right. And just little things like just finding your Airbnb that you're going to stay at, and like having to look through all the locations. What part of the city do you want to stay in? Like what, and then you got to look at the reviews and dive into the reviews. My wife, she wants to make sure the AC works really well. I want to make sure the bed's comfortable. And it's just
Wi-Fi.
life, all that stuff is a bit of a challenge. And then when you get to these places, every place you go to, it's a new grocery store. It's a new lock on the door. It's a new pillow. It's a new bed. How does it squeak? How does it move? Is it comfortable? Is it uncomfortable? It's all those things. So
Loud street noises.
everything, it's never consistent. But the upside to this, so the positives are the amount of patience and malleability and flexibility that you learn to adopt to being able to pivot and move in an ever-changing environment is at the highest level it could possibly be. We're in a constant state of flow and movement. And, if you're like, Derek, you can come to my, hang at my place tonight, but you got to sleep on the garage floor. I'd be like, okay, like whatever. Like I've slept on an airport floor. It's fine. I'll figure it out. And I think that opens up another space and capacity, and you have the ability to endure and how you're able to handle change management and things that come at you, because all we're doing is changing constantly. There's no consistency in our life, which we wanted, right? I just want to be very clear that, like, don't feel bad for me. Like I wanted this change because it creates excitement. I think people want consistency and inconsistency in their lives, right? So for us right now, we want a bit more inconsistency and experiences. So the upside is experiences, man. We've done some of the most incredible things. The people we have met on these locations has been unbelievable. Just new friendships. We got a guy that we met at a wine tour in Porto, Portugal, was coming to Vegas to celebrate New Year's with us. Like we met him in Portugal and he's meeting us in Vegas. The friendships you create. The food has been unbelievably good, right? I'm not a big fan of the American healthcare system or American food system, both of them actually. So the whole nother topic of conversation. But we ate out dinner, Craig, 107 days in a row. Every single day we were gone, we ate out dinner. If I did that in the US, I'd probably need chemotherapy, right?
Right.
But like here, I feel amazing. The food is fresh. There's no chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, like all that stuff doesn't exist in that food. So the food's been incredible. The culture has been amazing. And some of the best memories are created while you're traveling. And I feel this trip that we have on this planet is very much so all about experiences, making connections with people and creating, and being out there creating content, experiencing these things and having these adventures are things that, when it's our last breaths, those are the things that matter. While I believe in building an empire, building a business, acquiring wealth, and all that stuff, we don't take any of that with us. But these memories and these experiences, I feel those stick with us very much so. So that's been the biggest upside of this.
So 5 years ago, prior to me moving to Scottsdale, I was like, okay, I have a month in time. I got to do something here. It's like, okay, I'm going to go to Asia, which I could tell you exactly where I went, so on and so forth. Basically, what I did to a day, and that was 5 years ago, half a decade, right? And now I have a good memory, but I can tell you exactly what I was doing. Couldn't remember what I did a month ago, but those memories are everlasting. The discomfort, the feeling those things, it's all a great lesson and a great memory for sure. So let's talk about. So I've got a couple things I want to round out with because we're almost coming to our hour. But two things. Number one is, or I guess one and two is, where have you been so far this year? Where would you go next? And where you're going to go next. And then the final thing I want to end with, which is budgeting. How do you get comfortable kind of in the spend mode, kind of dollars going out,
Good
in the
question.
routine there, how you preset it up with maybe investments to maybe supplement your income, things of that nature. So I guess let's start with where you've gone so far this year, top experiences, and then where you're going in 2025.
All right, so where we've been so far this year is we spent about 3 months in Portugal, but we hit all of Portugal, a lot of Portugal. We went to the Azores, small island, archipelago of islands, sort of in the middle of the Atlantic first. Then we went to Madeira, which is another island, which is Portuguese, for a couple of weeks. Then went to Porto, which is a north of Portugal, worked our way down to Nazaré, which is famous for having the biggest surf waves in the world. Then went to Lisbon. Most people know what that is. And then we spent a month in the Algarve, which is the most, they year over year are voted as the most beautiful beaches in the world. Portugal was incredible. From there, we left and we went to Pakistan, which a lot of people are like, whoa, Pakistan, what are you?
Big difference, I would say.
Big
Europe,
difference.
Asia. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, what are you, crazy? Isn't that dangerous? I will tell you that when the Pakistan video comes out, which will be in 1 week, it will blow people's mind because most people think of Pakistan is not what Pakistan is like, not even close. The most hospitable, friendly people I've ever met. Some of the greatest food. It was an
Well, Middle
unbelievable
Eastern
experience.
hospitality is a big thing they pride themselves on. Little known fact.
You're 100% right, and like they're not used to seeing American, white Americans there,
White
so they
people. Yeah.
white people. Yeah, we literally had people come up
With an
to us like,
American accent, not a French or German accent. Yeah.
exactly. I mean, they just don't see white people there. So and we were dressed a lot of times in their sort of their traditional
Garb.
clothes. And
Yeah.
we would have when I say lines, I mean a line of people lining up to take photos with us. And
Yep.
it was very interesting. We felt like, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman for a while. It's like, man, this is kind of cool. Then like literally we were there with two guys that have worked for us for the last 5 years, and they live in Pakistan. We'd never met them. They're like brothers. We built the business on them. We have an office in Pakistan where we do a lot of our development, and built a business with them. So they're like brothers. They're like family. So we stayed with them. Really got the true authentic experience. Then we went to Dubai. Dubai is off the chain. Just it's amazing. It's like this utopian world. It's even hard to describe. We love Dubai. We plan on going back next year for a month in preparation for this race I'll be doing that will be starting right around that area in 2026.
Well, the
Um,
irony is that Dubai is actually, although far away, really easy to get to.
it is. It's if you for people listening, you get a chance to go to Dubai. It's amazing. It's surprisingly a lot less expensive than what you think it is. People think it's just you need to be a
A
Sikh or
chic.
something, yeah,
Yeah.
to be able to afford it. No, it was. Then we went to Munich, Germany, and we went to Prague. I mean, shoot, Munich, Germany was way more expensive than Dubai. For example, we didn't expect. And Prague was amazing. We took a bath in a tub full of beer in Prague, which why not? They
Yeah.
had something called the Prague Beer Spa, so we did that. So that was our trips. Now we're home doing a world tour, U.S. tour, just seeing all our friends and family, kids, all that stuff. They're scattered. That's why I'm in central Pennsylvania right now with hanging with the Amish. And then we head out to New Zealand next in January after we go to Las Vegas.
Which is summer there because hemispheres.
That's correct. So we're chasing summer. We realize we do not like cold. Like
75 degrees year round is what I strive for. I've declared war on cold and I'm winning decisively. That's why I live in Phoenix and Oregon in the summer. I don't live here in the summer for obvious reasons. Not worth
smart.
it.
It's
Yeah.
not worth it. Yeah, dude. I'm just taking a page out of your book. We're chasing summer, and then from there, a couple highlights because it would be a really long list of places we're going. But next year, a couple highlights: Japan, Peru, Brazil, the Galapagos, Iceland, Bora Bora, There's some of the in New Zealand. There's some of the main ones, and like I said,
How
we're
long
staying
in
in
each
place longer.
place? And are you tethering the traveling together? Like if you're going to be in New Zealand, then you're going to Bora Bora because it's basically a skip away, if you will. And then are you going to Japan from there? Like what is the sequential order roughly? And then are you going back to Europe?
We are going back to Europe. We're actually going to go to Spain for a month. That was one of the spots after we leave Iceland. So it's pretty much New Zealand. Then we come back, and then so we got some stuff to do in Phoenix. Actually, I'll be there in February. We
We'll
discussed
be whining and dining.
that absolutely. Seafood towers for everyone, and
Yes.
and from there we're going to shoot over to um, it. We want to make sure we spend enough time back in the States seeing friends and family. So, and we also had to coordinate like when's rainy season. So you're right. When we're in New Zealand, we could go to Bora Bora, but it's the rainy season. So we're going to Bora Bora actually next, I think October, November, when it's not in the rainy season. Oh, I'm sorry, next summer or something. I forget when it is because I don't have it all memorized. But that was the other thing, was navigating the weather and the rain. Like, how do you go into certain areas? So there's certain areas we'd be flying over, but we're just going to fly over it because it's monsoon season, for example. So these all things had to be factored. We're trying to focus this year because we only planned 3 months before. Now we're planning a year. We wanted to focus on experiences. So we wanted to find anchor experiences like Galapagos, Iceland. I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. We're going to Tanzania while we're there as well to do a safari. Those are like lifelong, like dream, like anchor
Goals, bucket list
experiences,
stuff, if you will.
bucket list stuff. Exactly. And then what anchor that, then build time around that area and to do other supplemental non-anchor types of things. Right. And then stay in a place where we do these sprints. So we may go like 3 weeks where we're doing like 10-day stints in a couple places. And then we park in a place for a month and kind of chill mode, caught up on work, whatever you got to do from that perspective. So it's, like I said, the planning is a full-time job.
Is it overwhelming to figure how the heck am I going to figure out and structure a year?
Highly overwhelming. But having gone through the last year of doing all the things that I had to do to get to this point, that prepared me for this, to then say, how do I create a system and a process to plan my life? Because I'm not going to do this every time. I said we need an SOP for deciding where we're going to go and where in that area, what are we going to see, how are we going to locate all the vendors, how are we going to decide the vendor, and just create a system that we just can actually put a VA on and have them do some of the research for us. So that's been in development. I'd say the SOP is almost done. So as we give it a go here for a full year. So the plan's 3 years, Craig. And then after that, it's, we'll see.
Do you
We
see
bought it.
yourself going back to home ownership? Do you see yourself going back to a situation where you even have a long-term rental? Maybe you get one core nucleus, or do you see yourself being places quarterly? Like, how will this kind of change your, I guess, life moving forward?
Um, that's a good question. We get asked that a lot. I do see ourselves maybe one day going back to homeownership, but and only just because I can see this growing maybe old. Maybe it doesn't. Right now, I'll tell you, I have zero desire to own a home again. Like, not even remotely interested in it. I want nothing to do with it for quite some time. So what I fear is traveling at a pace that's exhausting, that would make me want to retreat back or parachute back to the comforts of home. So I'm trying to adjust the dials so that we travel at a pace that's comfortable and feels like home, right? So you get that perfect balance of consistency and inconsistency in our lives. That's what I'm seeking. That's what I'm after.
I'm going to
So
make a pitch for you here. I think you should get a long-term place in Phoenix, be here during the winter months, like basically October to April, and
okay.
then spend April to September traveling year-round. And then you get all your you get some comfort. You can get a nice rental. I can help you out with that. And then you travel place to place to place accordingly, and you still kind of have a blend.
Bala would love that idea because he wants me in Phoenix. So I think he'd probably double down on that and help you go find the place. I see that happening. I see us probably maybe being like you said, 3 months, or maybe having a couple smaller places,
For
like one in
sure.
Europe, one here. So part of what we're doing now is like we're going to places and we exit and we're like Madeira, like I'd have a place there. Out of all the places we went so far,
It's
Madeira,
not expensive there, I heard. And as we were
so
saying
cheap.
before, a
Yeah,
very seasoned traveler who's gone everywhere and twice. Three favorite places: New Zealand, Madeira, and Switzerland. So go
yeah,
figure.
man.
We're
Yeah,
we're,
and
we're yeah, we're getting close to running out of time here. So I want to ask one final question here, and then I'll have to let you go.
you got it.
Budgeting, monthly expenses, and how you design your investing to get to this point. That's if you're doing well, you're successful. That is what kind of comes to mind. How do you structure your portfolio where you can do this and feel comfortable?
Yeah, so great question. We were fortunate that we were able to sell a home, make a tremendous profit on it. So that, we had a lot of our capital deployed in a variety of different assets. We got it spread across, like most people do, some in the stock market, some in crypto, some in a good bit in real estate. But then we received a pretty large chunk that we just dumped that into cash flowing assets for the next 3 to 5 years, right? Because that's what a lot of the hold periods were for these assets, to allow us to have that little extra mailbox money. So if we want to reinvest more into the business, bring on more people into the business to be able to run the business, and maybe take a little less cash flow from the business, but take it from the investments, we're in good shape, right? So that was the thesis and the mindset, and that's actually worked out quite well for us. And then as far as budgeting, what's amazing is my wife's very frugal. And
I
I'm
know
not.
I've watched the videos where she's more frugal than you are, which probably makes things easier because I think most people
Good
don't have
balance.
it that way.
Yeah, it's a great balance. Yeah, so I push her for more high end stuff. She pushes for more like Section 8 housing types of things, and we, so we have this play on each other, and it's a nice balance. So I say it evens out. But I will tell you that our overhead, right? So what we're a monthly spend versus what we were in the States versus what it is here is probably, and we're living very, we eat out almost every meal. And we stay at Airbnbs, and they're nice. I'd like to bring them up a notch, but Amy, again, she wins some of that battle sometimes. We're spending probably about 70% of what we are spending in the States, and this is traveling the world full time and doing whatever the hell I want, pretty much for the
Eating
most
where
part.
you want, really, for the most part. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, not like over the top. I'm buying no, taking baths in Moe or anything like that, but living, it, like Diddy style, but doing more comfortable. So I had to get it in there, but
I
doing
know.
more comfortable, doing more comfortable types of travel experience where I'm not, it's like, oh, I don't want to do that because that's expensive. You know what I mean? Like we're
Yeah,
not having that conversation. So we've been blessed. It's it's more expensive than we thought it would be. We thought it would be less, but it's still less expensive than what it was when we were in the States.
incredible. I love that. Well, Derek, I could keep you here forever, but that wouldn't be fair to you and your schedule. I want to get you off so you can go to your next meeting. Can you just plug yourself where people can find you, and then also when you'll be in the States? And are you going to any conferences? Are you going to go to BEC so we can reconvene, hopefully?
Yeah, actually, you turned me on to maybe hitting up BEC while we were in town. So I think we're probably going to hit BEC, might hit Race Fest, and I'm excited to be in the States. I think like 3 or 4 times next year for extended stints. And best place to find me. You can find us at adaptmediaagency.com. You can email me, Derek at adaptmediaagency.com. And if you're into travel and experiences and want to see a little fun between my wife and I trying to figure out this lifestyle, we do have the YouTube channel called Rich and Homeless. If you type in Rich and Homeless, you might have to put in the word Derek because it's still kind of learning the algorithm. We talk about being rich in experience, rich in culture, redefining what rich means, and all under the confines of being homeless because we are. So it's fun.
There's not enough travel YouTube or travel videos on YouTube that I like that are good quality like yours. So I like legitimately live for it. So I've loved it. I'm a fan. I've watched over it. I've subscribed on 2 channels and liked on both of my YouTubes just because I got to do it for the culture here. But thank you so much for being you and coming on here and sharing some of your time. I know you're obviously looking to limit hours and things of that nature, but thank you for donating an hour here. And everyone go reach out to Derek if you have travel questions, if you're looking to invest in the medical spaces, the 10Y projects that has a sliver of room left. Guys, Derek's the best, so couldn't advocate for him enough. For all the listeners out there, we appreciate you, and you'll see you next week. Peace.